Now I'm really excited about this spot because this is a location that taps into Venti, a big buck we had last year that he'll really be a target last year. He had 21 points. He'll really be a target this year. And last year we just thought he was too young, wanted to wait and see, and he did make it through the season. So I'm hoping Venti is alive and well. We should be able to identify him by the end of May here on trail cam photos, maybe early June, because he's going to look like a beast. He's going to look odd. But this taps into him, and for that, you know, we already wanted this location. It's a small food plot extending here. You see the rye in here. A lot of the rye is clipped. There's an apple tree down in this location on this side, and then we have a larger plot over here. So let's say this is 1/8 of an acre. The one over here is more like 1/4 of an acre to 1/3, and we're going to extend it going that way. This is an outstanding bedding area over here. This is already a great movement through this location. So I'm looking at like we're turning all of this into switchgrass. We already have that edge planned for switchgrass so that we can get into this location without spooking deer. Now, if this is a food plot here, I can't get down into there and tap into this movement that goes left and right through here without potentially blowing my scent back up in here. And because this is gonna be very secure and small, we could get movement through here if it was a food plot during daylight. Instead, I wanna move my attractions. I wanna create this as access, and I want to be able to tap into the movement right here. And a water hole is a perfect addition to this location, and I'm going to talk about why, how we're going to hunt it, and how it relates to this entire movement. You can see the nice big oak right here. Perfect tree. Really good cover for putting a stand location in. And is that a woodcock?
You see what?
Yeah, I think a woodcock just took off right in here. So anyways, grouse, woodcock, we love it out here. But this oak is a great tree for a stand, obviously, but it's not a great tree if it's located in the wrong location. Now, because we're making this all switchgrass right here, we're going to be able to tunnel a trail right into that oak, and there's a point over here and a point over to the left. So we're getting in between that bow tie movement. We'll be able to create bedding over there so that when we come into this location, we have less of a chance of deer bedding right in this location. Now, deer don't like to bed in switchgrass or other grasses because it's grass. It's no food. And if it's not switchgrass, it's not cover. But deer need to feed twice during their bedding hours during the day before they go to their afternoon food source. And so grass is not an advantageous place for them to bed. So we don't count on deer being in the switchgrass. We'll tunnel out a trail, go right to here. And by converting this into switchgrass, by adding a water hole on the other side and a mock scrape, then we're going to be able to pinch the deer movement down through here. A lot more likely to be in front of the stand where we have predictable winds, where we can blow our winds out towards the fields. And again, in the morning, it'll be easy to blow our scent through here. We can come right through the switch to get into this location. And if we have to go through the ag fields or alongside the ag fields, we'll just wait till a little bit after light so the deer are clear of the fields, and then we'll sneak down in here. Now in the evening, again, when we're looking downhill like this, we have to have, just because the wind points going back this way and uphill, away from this tree and the movement's down below, we can't take that and take it on face value. That's what the thermals are going to do. When we're up here high, if there's only 0 to 3, 0 to 5 miles an hour of wind as it gets dark, then those evening thermals that were in our face, or those evening winds that were in our face, are going to be pulled downhill because they don't have enough power to push up and out of this hollow. The longer the elevation change, the greater that power is, the earlier it becomes. Around here in these areas, typically those evening thermals start taking in place about 45 minutes before dark, maybe a half hour. Then of course, the more it drops in temperature before dark, the greater that drop's going to be, or the greater the power. But you can count on, we have 300 to 500 foot changes in elevation where we hunt around here. And you can count on that taking place the last half hour, 45 minutes. If it's too light, those winds are just going to settle downhill right into the water hole that we're planning, saturate this area and ruin the spot. So we're hunting here in the morning, very predictable. If it's coming up, we could have it coming straight from behind us. It's going to wrap right back uphill in the morning. So we get winds coming from the north and the south in this location, which is pretty incredible because it gives us a lot of opportunity, whether it's south-southwest, southwest, southeast, into north-northwest, north-northeast. We have a lot of opportunity to hunt this location. What's great here is we have the water hole, or the food plot on the other side. We're already going to have a great stand location behind a red cedar up there, more for evening hunting. We get a lot of movement through there. I don't want to add a water hole on that food plot because the deer are already going to the food plot. So I'm doubling up my attractions and not getting the most of potential stand locations. What I mean by that is this is pretty thick cover down here. It's next to a bedding. It's next to a hollow movement. The deer are moving around and cruising on the top of this, especially bucks from side to side. Those go straight out to the food source and hit their evening after dark destination food source. We have them hit holding plots and then they go out there after dark. Bucks though, they're the ones that travel side to side. They're going to be cruising, looking for does, maybe coming from a bedding area over here, going to this food source. They'll bed further away from their afternoon food source, so they'll come in from the sides more. And so this is really helping us tap into the buck movement. Now the reason we're not doubling up those attractions is because I can put a water hole right down here and I can tap into that cruising movement that's daytime. It could be, and we've seen it, bucks are out there during daylight, but when we're talking about 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock, 2 in the afternoon, less likely to come right out in the middle of an open food plot, especially the larger we make that plot. Instead, I want that water will end up being about 40, 50 yards away from the corner of the food down here. Represents a great spot where deer are bedded dry all day up in these hills. They exit those dry bedding areas, they hit the water, then they go to the food. That allows me to not only have a great evening stand right here as deer are hitting the water before they go to food, but it also allows us to have a midday cruising rut stand, rut morning stand. So more of an all-day use. Now there's purpose for this food plot stand location over here. It's behind a red cedar. We can get into it, very low impact. If we're coming out here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, safer to go over there than it is right here. It gives us a little bit of different wind advantage. So I'm looking at that these two stands are complementary. They have different purposes, potentially different winds. One's more slanted toward morning, one's more slanted towards evening. Then this water hole is a great connection of the dots from dry bedding that will create, it's already good bedding. We already have red cedars in there, they're growing, and a lot of benches that step down. But we have the dry bedding, we have water hole, we already have cruising movement that taps around the top of this hollow, going to food, and then we have big food that way too. So we're kind of in this movement, and that big food that way is probably 150 yards, maybe 200 yards away. So pretty staggered through here to create a lot of movement side to side and not straight out. One thing about this location too is, I don't want to forget to mention, is we have apple trees through here quite a bit, but we have 2 apple trees right here, and we have a dead one down here that finally succumbed to not having much sunlight, but we have an apple tree right there and one over there. These are right in front of the stand, so we need to trim these up anyways, but definitely getting more sunlight to here. So we'll have that combination of apple trees, water hole, mock scrape, pinched off from below, great access through the switchgrass up here, between bedding areas, between food sources. We got a lot going on in this one spot. And I wrote a chapter in my first book in 2012. I talked about tree stand stories, and basically, what kind of story does your tree stand tell? The greater the story, the greater the potential for that location. So we have a lot of things going on in this spot. We have lots of habitat change, great habitat features of mock scrapes and attractants, water holes, apple trees, pinching between bedding areas, big food source off to the side. So we have many different aspects of this story that dictate this is going to be a great stand location this year. Now this is an excellent cruising trail right here that skirts the back of this, what was the old food plot, which will now be a switchgrass field. Now again, with the switchgrass up here and the deer not being able to see past that, they're going to feel more comfortable being up here towards the top, which places them in a better position for the stand. But we have this cruising trail right here, and then we have another cruising trail right here. So both these come together, and if you can see, the oak tree is just right there. I would estimate it's about 25 yards. So we're going to be a sit up there. We have lots of branches for cover around, and might be difficult to see, but the food plot just starts right over there, about 40, 50 yards. The stand location is far enough away, and we'd have good access in and out to where we can get in and out without spooking deer, even if there's 20 deer out on that food plot. We use very, very quiet, extremely quiet, all steel family tradition stands, so they don't make any noise when they're going up or down. If you had to come in here and set up a tree saddle type stand or a climber or using a noisy stand, then you're going to use a lot of commotion. And when you have tight situations like this and tight corners where there's setups that are right on top of deer, you need to be able to get in and out without making a sound. And so we rely on stands that are already set up, pre-hung stands, and getting in here, very quiet stands, getting in and out. So I'm looking at, we have the tree up there, We have a convergence of trails right here for cruising trails. In fact, this one gets really beat in down here. So where I like to place that water hole, the oak tree is right there, probably a 26-yard shot, something like that. The trails are right here. So what I'd probably do is push that water hole just up the hill a little bit so it's not right on the deer trails that are coming through here. If a buck has any aversion to that water hole, we're sticking it uphill a little bit at 22 yards. I don't like sticking it at 15 yards, 18 yards. Get it between 20 and 25, closer to 25, because I want those deer to come in here and not pay attention to me in any way. Now, another aspect of this stand is that right down here we have another cruising trail. Now that cruising trail is about at, I would guess, 30 to 32 yards. I don't want to count on that shot down in this location. Now, if it was open woods and we had good shots, that might be acceptable to look at that and say, okay, that 32 yards is max for that movement. What I'm going to do is, you can see there's a lot of aspen right here. You can see these aspen right here. We have a shagbark hickory. They're for the most part leaning downhill. So I'm going to drop these trees, and as we go further down here into this ravine, if you can see down here, it gets very, very steep. And at some point, the movements and any trails that cross down below are too far out of this movement anyway, so I don't need to be concerned with those. They primarily want to stay on this upper edge. See this trail right here? See this big mess of trees? To me, the trails up here, they're coming together more. It's a better system anyways, but I would estimate that we're, even on this trail right now, we might even be pushing 35, 36 yards. It's just too far outside of the window. So I'm going to drop these trees over this ditch area, and I'm going to force the deer to either travel 40, 50 yards down at the next crossing, or 80, whatever it is, or right up here on top. And when it's up here on top, we're going to use a flat spot for a mock scrape. We're going to put our water hole in. And our water hole will work here because the deer bedded dry right here. They're on the way to green vegetation. And a buck that's cruising through this thick cover and location can cruise through here, not even step foot out into the food plot. And we're watching him in his bedroom. And then using the switch and providing that screening cover up above will make him feel safer even moving closer up to above. And then we have the mock scrape and the water hole to attract him. So water hole, I'm looking at a 110-gallon tank, maybe a 150-gallon tank, just requires a lot more digging. And we're going to dig that into the side of the hill. Now, in some of the more fantasy land states where deer don't have as much hunting pressure as they do around here, or people using water holes, unnatural things, deer blinds out in the woods that stick out, then I want to make sure that I bury that water hole. And what I mean by that is I want the lip of the water hole, at least especially the backside, to be undergrade, underground level. If we do that, it's advantageous because the deer don't see that black line and black shape sticking out and have some type of an aversion to that. At the same time, we'll collect water. When it's below ground level, then we can rely on it to self-fill, and then we'll also have a trail that we have installed for the UTV, so we can actually drive right down here, put water in it. And if I had to put water in it at any other time of the year, my most important time would be about October 15th, October 20th, to make sure it's full, and then get out of there and you'll be good for the rest of the season. Now, last year in 2020 was a time that we should have added water, or could have added water. And then before that, I believe it was 2016 was the next time where we could have added water. It was just, we had enough moisture and rain throughout the entire summer, especially the late summer, we had flooding rains, that we wouldn't have had to fill it. If you get down into a 50, 60 gallon, 70 gallon is pushing it, 80 gallons, but especially 30 gallon, 25 gallon tanks, what you'll find is they just don't last long enough when it's dry, especially if it's late October. You could have it full on October 15th and dry November 10th. With a 20, 30, 50 gallon tank, you really need to get around 100 gallons or more, and that'll have the ability to last and make it through the season. You don't want that water to run out, because once they establish a pattern of use of hitting that water and they can rely on it, and then all of a sudden it's yanked away because it dries out, it takes them a while to figure out, hey, there's water back in this location. And let's face it, during the end of October, early portion of the rut, you just don't have time for those deer to establish that pattern and revisit the water and revisit it again and put it within their window. So we're looking for a lot of cruising opportunity in this location. We'll definitely have a camera on this water hole mock scrape combo. And last year, getting the property for the first time, I really have some key water hole locations to install. But after we installed 15 blinds, several or 15 tree stands, several blinds, 10 10 or 11 mock scrape locations, camera locations, switchgrass, all our food plots. Just really ran out of time. I hit the priorities first. That next step was a water hole. Probably should have taken the time to put in 1 or 2 water holes last year, but this will definitely be the perfect transition for deer heading from dry bedding area to the food source. We get a look at them from up here. Great access in and out of switchgrass. We're pinching off the movement that's a little bit lower, making sure that they're in our archery window right up here. And this is thick enough through here and a lot of brush. We had the food source over there. Once we get in that stand location, what's really cool is to be able to shoot that whole food source with a gun. But we'll get some great looks back down in here with a gun too. So this will be a great gun season stand. One that I would probably use my bow for because everything's pinched down so tight. I like to use my bow during gun season where it's legal, especially in Wisconsin. And I can't wait to set this up. Water holes make sense, 1/4 to a 1/2 mile away from each other. On a 40 acres, you could have 40 acre parcel, you could have 1, 2, maybe 3 if you have major elevation change where you have water holes at different levels, different sides of your land, almost like a triangle. And then out in this location where we have a lot of field edge, 178 acres, we're looking at probably 5 to 6 water holes in total. That way we place a huge premium on each water hole. Each water hole is around 100 gallons. We want that water hole not on the food source. Don't double up your attractions. This will create a great stopping point for deer, and we'd waste that stopping point right there. You could have mature bucks hit this all day long without ever having to step foot out in the open in a food plot, and they'll find that a lot lower risk, and it creates a great evening spot where deer will hit the water, pop out right there, and when they pop out into that corner of the field right there, they're within about 40 yards of our other stand locations. So even if we're not directly on the water in this oak tree, we'll be in a Family Traditions tripod stand up there behind the red cedar, and we'll be able to tap into the movement that hits the water and is heading out to into the food in the afternoon. And we're going to create that food source. So bedding areas that way, this way, this pinch at the top of the hollow, and on this cruising point, the water, the mock scrapes, definitely add a camera. And it has all the ingredients for not only a great buck hunt, but hopefully tapping into Venti this year and seeing some movement. This is right in his wheelhouse, and we hope to see him hitting his new water hole, hopefully his new favorite water hole, during the late summer. We'll get the water hole out in May. May is usually our whitetail water hole month. You can still take advantage of some spring rains, but there's a lot of other things we're doing right now, including spraying, getting our switchgrass prepped, and we'll bring this entire process to you throughout the year, all the pieces that come together. But enjoy this spot and the potential of this spot. We will enjoy bringing it to you this fall. Hey guys, I really appreciate you watching today's video. We're out here having some fun today. We're planting some switchgrass, cutting some timber, making some bedding areas, but most importantly, we're putting it all together, and that's critical. Any habitat improvements you're making, you can't just make improvements because it's a good spot. You have to link those together so that helps your hunt this fall. Really, I encourage you to check out my web classes. The link is in the description. It's helped a lot of folks design their properties and do what we're out here having fun doing right now.